In the upcoming Path of Exile Expedition patch, there is a new defensive mechanic called Ward, which is found on the Expedition base types. I want to do a quick technical breakdown of Ward's mechanics, similar to what I did for Petrified Blood prior to Ultimatum League. Due to the nature of the mechanic, and just because I want to get this info out as soon as possible, I'm going to keep this video light on graphics. I'm also not going to go into subjective discussions, such as my personal opinions and experimental build ideas. The focus of this part, at least, will be on technical details. So what is Ward? Ward protects you only from the first hit that damages you, up to a specified amount of damage. After the first damaging hit comes in, regardless of the amount of damage dealt, Ward is then disabled for a specified duration, which defaults to 5 seconds. Because Ward can only protect you from damage once every few seconds, it's best used on builds that infrequently take damage, such as builds that rely on evasion, dodge, and/or block. Ward is considered a defense, making this the first time a new defense has been introduced since the original trio of armor, evasion rating, and energy shield. Ward has two states, broken and not broken. When Ward is not broken, the next damaging hit will damage your Ward before your life or energy shield. If you have 500 Ward, then up to 500 damage can be absorbed by Ward from this hit. As soon as your Ward takes any non-zero amount of damage from a hit, Ward is broken for the next 5 seconds, after which it is restored and can absorb damage again. Ward restoration does not work the same way as energy shield recharge. By default, energy shield recharge has a 2-second delay period, after which 20% of maximum energy shield is recovered per second. Thus, the full recharge takes up to 7 seconds, and if you take damage at any point, the 2-second delay period begins again. On the other hand, Ward restoration is unaffected by taking damage. Ward is always instantly restored 5 seconds after it is broken, unless you have modifiers that make Ward restore faster. Ward can only protect you from hits, not damage over time. Taking damage over time, such as from the Shaper's Beam, will neither damage nor break Ward. Instead, the damage will be directed to your life and/or energy shield. If you take a hit that ignites you, the damage from the hit will break Ward, and the subsequent damage over time will go to life and/or energy shield. Ward makes no distinction between different types of damage. This means it protects at full effectiveness against physical, fire, cold, lightning, and chaos damage. Ward also doesn't distinguish between damage sources, except to exclude damage over time. Whether the incoming damage is attack, spell, or secondary damage is immaterial. Keep in mind that Ward is only broken by a hit if that hit deals non-zero damage. Evasion and dodge are the defensive mechanics that can prevent you from being hit entirely. However, it is possible to be hit without being damaged by the hit. For example, blocking a hit will cause the hit to deal no damage, provided you don't use glancing blows or anything else that makes you take damage from blocked hits. Other ways to fully prevent damage while still being hit include Aegis skills, avoid damage modifiers, and Immortal Call with 7 or more endurance charges. Because Ward is classified as a defense, it can interact with certain heist enchantments, tempering catalysts, and increased defenses modifiers. It's unknown whether Ward modifiers will exist on body armors or jewelry, so the first two may not be relevant. The distinction also matters when crafting on the new item bases, with things like Fossils and Harvest, as these methods can interact with the defenses tag on item affixes. Ward does not actually change the amount of damage that you take. It is similar to Mind Over Matter and Steelskin in that it doesn't modify damage taken. Instead, it redirects damage that would otherwise apply to your life or energy shield to your Ward. This is important for tracking things like cast when damage taken triggers. Damage dealt to your Ward is still considered damage taken by you. That being said, Ward is not a resource like life, energy shield, and Steelskin's buff, which gradually deplete to 0. There is no such thing as maximum Ward, and when your Ward is broken, it is not set to 0. If you have 500 Ward, then you always have 500 Ward, even when it's broken. The difference is that Ward fails to redirect damage while broken. In terms of when in combat calculations Ward is handled, it is applied just after guard skills and just before energy shield. Now, that probably doesn't mean much to you unless you're already familiar with the order of defensive layers, so I'll briefly go over that here. Your first layers of defense against a hit are evasion and then dodge. If both fail, then you will be hit. Once you're hit, the game handles any damage taken as modifiers, such as the one on Lightning Coil. Only after that is the damage mitigated by physical damage reduction, resistances, and avoid damage modifiers. Next, any modifiers to damage taken are handled. Notably, these include Fortify, Kintsugi, Wind Dancer, and Immortal Call. Now, block is applied, and only after this step is the amount of damage taken by the hit finalized. Then, the game has to decide what ultimately takes that damage. First up are layers that redirect the damage away from you, meaning the Jinxed Juju followed by Frost Shield. Next are Aegis skills, which fully redirect certain damage types away from your life and energy shield. After Aegis skills come guard skills that partially redirect damage, such as Steel Skin, Molten Shell, Arcane Cloak, and Bone Armor. Only after all that is ward applied. If the amount of incoming damage is still non-zero at this stage, and your ward is currently not broken, then all of the remaining damage is taken from your ward up to the amount of ward that you have. Ward is now broken and begins its restoration period, regardless of how much damage it took. If the damage exceeds your ward, the excess amount goes on to the next step, which is Energy Shield. Energy Shield takes all damage up to your maximum Energy Shield, unless that damage bypasses Energy Shield. Then, modifiers that make you take damage to mana before life, such as Mind Over Matter, are applied. Finally, any damage left at this point is taken from life. The only things that can apply after this step are things that directly modify the amount of life lost, such as Petrified Blood. Ward is explicitly designed to synergize with defensive mechanics that allow you to entirely negate incoming hits, whether that means preventing the hit or preventing the subsequent damage. I've mentioned all of these already, but these include evasion, dodge, avoid damage modifiers, immortal call, Aegis skills, and block. Because Ward complements these defensive layers, it also complements things that complement these defensive layers. For example, characters specialized in evasion and dodge use the Wind Dancer keystone, and sometimes use the Kintsugi body armor. Deadeyes in particular have access to Wind Ward, which also rewards being hit infrequently. All of these damage prevention layers, with the exception of Aegis skills, work well with Aspect of the Crab, which provides a ramping physical damage reduction bonus that is reset as soon as you take physical damage from a hit. Aspect of the Crab is functionally similar to Ward in the sense that crab barriers aren't necessarily lost when you're hit, only when the hit causes damage. Given that patch 3.15 is not released yet, we still don't know what all the sources of Ward are or what all of its scaling options will be. However, I'll draw what conclusions I can with limited information. Your base ward comes from the local ward values on the new Expedition base types. These base types don't have local armor, evasion rating, or energy shield values by default, instead having a local base ward value. That local value is increased by item quality as well as local flat and percentage-based modifiers on the item. All of the final local ward values on gear are added together, after which any global modifiers apply. It's unclear whether there are any sources of global increased ward available to the player, but increased defenses does exist in certain places. Most notably, Skin of the Lords and a certain Grasping Mail modifier will give 100% increased defenses. The merits of these two options depend on whether there will be any body armor base types that have local ward. Other potentially significant sources of increased defenses include Clutching Talismans and Mask of the Tribunal. We don't know yet whether there will be shield base types that grant ward, but if there are, then the increased defenses from equipped shield modifiers will also work as scaling options. In case you weren't aware, these are global modifiers that only apply to the total defenses granted by your shield. They are additive with other global modifiers to defenses. Also, tragically, Replica Veil of the Knight's Defenses Are Zero modifier does apply to ward. My apologies if this ruins your league start plans. In terms of the amount of ward you can get from the new base types, it looks like the local base ward values are higher than corresponding local energy shield values, but lower than local armor and evasion rating values. For endgame base types, base ward seems to be roughly twice base energy shield, and thus about 1/3 of base armor or evasion. If the new ward prefixes have the same numerical values as ones for existing defenses, we could expect to see, for example, rare helmets with 90 life and as much as 600 ward. The most significant scaling option I've been neglecting so far is Faithguard, an Expedition League unique that comes on a ward base. In addition to making ward restore faster, Faithguard also makes all global increases and reductions to maximum energy shield apply to ward instead. Please note the wording here. Increases and reductions refers specifically to any modifiers that say increased maximum energy shield or reduced maximum energy shield. Faithguard does not turn all sources of flat maximum energy shield into flat ward. It also does not interact with more or less modifiers to maximum energy shield. I'll expand on that point later. Lastly, it only applies to global increases and reductions. For example, having Faithguard equipped does not allow you to simply benchcraft local increased energy shield modifiers on ward base types to boost your ward. Faithguard opens up many avenues for scaling ward. Increased maximum energy shield passives are numerous on the skill tree. The Intelligence attribute inherently provides 1% increased maximum energy shield per 5 intelligence. Up to 20% increased maximum energy shield can be crafted as a prefix on amulets. I can't possibly list every noteworthy source of increased maximum energy shield, but I wouldn't be surprised if Faithguard ends up being the best way to obtain the highest amounts of ward. There are no more maximum energy shield modifiers in Path of Exile currently. There used to be, but not anymore. This means Faithguard's restriction to increases and reductions won't hurt you in any meaningful way. However, there is exactly one less maximum energy shield modifier in the game, and that comes with the Acrobatics keystone. Faithguard will not make the energy shield penalty from Acrobatics apply to Ward. This is significant because I imagine that many, if not most, characters using Ward as a defensive layer will use Acrobatics. Historically, the energy shield penalty on Acrobatics has discouraged the use of energy shield on evasion and dodge builds, a combination that otherwise has a lot of synergy. Ward does not have this problem, even with Faithguard. I'll be able to talk in more detail about how to scale Ward once the patch is out and all the tools are available. For now, I'll end the video here. I want to keep the focus of this video on the technical side of Ward. Before the patch drops, I'll put out a part 2 about my own opinions on the merits of Ward as a viable defensive layer. In the next video, I'll probably also do at least one detailed damage calculation example involving multiple defensive layers and Ward. If there's interest in it, I can also talk about potential build ideas. I'm considering starting the League with an evasion-heavy Deadeye that would be complemented by Ward as a minor defensive layer. If necessary, I can also expand on interactions with Ward that I may be neglecting in this video. As always, feel free to suggest whatever you'd like in the comments, especially if it pertains to the next video. Thanks for watching.